Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We are here for another round of the Astro-Babble, where I look at 5 charts donated by you, the lovely followers on Instagram and Facebook, and we are gonna go live, and YouTube as well. For those of you who don't know, I record all of the live streams and put them on the YouTube channel. Just search for ScorpioRisingAstrology.com, and the channel should pop up right there on YouTube. Yeah, so likewise, if you would like to be a part of the live streams, if you would like your chart featured, feel free to private message me your birth date, birthplace, exact birth time. We'll add you to the list. The list is rather long, so please be patient, but I will message you when your chart is featured. Let's see, and yeah, also I am an astrologer by trade, so if you would like to schedule a private consult, and or if you would like to learn astrology, you can always do so by visiting my website, ScorpioRisingAstrology.com. Okay, let's go ahead and let's start the live stream, shall we? We have 5 charts. Let's pull up the first one. And first chart is going to be Kimberly. Kimberly, who has her Leo ascendant. Ruler of the chart is the Sun in Virgo in the 2nd house of finance. It's a really strong financial placement. Mars is also in Virgo in the 2nd house of finance in that kind of worker sign of Virgo. Whenever I see Mars in Virgo, I always think of just a farmer archetype, right? Mars is traditionally a deity. Mars/Aries is traditionally a deity who is known as a farmer and a warrior, because in ancient times what would happen is during the farming season, Mars would specifically be associated with the crop and the harvest, but then those same farmers who tended to the food supply of the city were then recruited for the wars and the conquering during the non-harvest season. And Mars in the 2nd house gives me that vibe of both kind of what needs to be done financially, but also what needs to be done work-wise. Moon in Libra, Venus in Libra in the 3rd house, plus Mercury in Libra in the 3rd house of writing, teaching, communication. That's rather glorious. Lots of strong teaching energy in that space. But the South Node is also here, which I think is fun, because the South Node is a point in the charts that we look to see where we've been, not where we're going. And so there's talent here in the 3rd house of writing, teaching, communication. There is Venusian grace here, right? There is a way with words here in Kimberly's chart, but that's not where the chart is headed. That's not where the chart is going. Instead, we have Mars in the 2nd house of finance ruling the North Node in the 9th house of travel, foreigners, higher education, and spirituality. The need to monetize learning, monetize education, monetize travel, monetize worldliness. That's where the chart is going. You know, it's nice to stay small, and it's nice to kind of be safe in the familiar, right? But this chart is expanding. This chart is using the fire energy, the financial energy, the 9th house of travel and worldliness and spirituality, foreigners, all of that to really bust open, to expand the energy of the chart, to use those fire placements, use the literal planet Mars of will and action, the Sun who's ruling the chart of identity and ego and radiance, to move into that 9th house and to expand with Jupiter. Although Jupiter is here in Aries retrograde, which is not necessarily a great position for Jupiter, still Jupiter, and still a very clear direction in the chart. You know, it does also kind of back up the idea of Pluto and Scorpio being in the 4th house of family. The 4th house is the safe space in the chart. It's the personal space. It's the midnight hour in the chart clockwise. And when we see this part of the chart housing Pluto and Scorpio, god of the underworld, you know, one of the deepest, darkest generational formations that we could possibly get, a planet of secrets, there's a certain level of toxicity in the silent darkness in the 4th house of family, where if Kimberly stays too stagnant, right, too safe, too comfortable, then there's a very strong chance that Pluto and Scorpio will start to become evil, right? And evil is not really the right word for that, but kind of self-defeating through actions that are misguided or misunderstood by the personal development process. You know, that Mars and Virgo back in the second house of finance ruling that Pluto and Scorpio traditionally. You know, Mars needs to take the upper hand through work, through financial discernment, through self-worth and value. That Pluto and Scorpio in the fourth house is all about ruminating in the deceit, right? The secrets, the hidden places, which are not always comfortable, right? And I think that because the chart is expanding so much, because it is so much about moving forward and moving up and out of that fourth house, and even that third house with the South Node there, you know, that what comes easy is not always right. And that Pluto and Scorpio really does kind of seal the deal in my interpretation, where it's like, yes, Pluto and Scorpio is a strong generational planet because it is ruling its secondary sign. But to have that in the fourth house of family while the chart is expanding, you know, Pluto starts to resent that. You know, it's very much like the myth of Persephone, where Persephone has to return to Demeter and nourish the world with springtime and summer, right? This chart is moving into springtime and summer, away from the deep, dark depths of the fall and the winter Pluto, the winter Hades, where Persephone would descend. This chart is done descending. Venus is in her grace and her power. Like, it's all about reclaiming the justice, reclaiming the air, reclaiming the fire, and creating that expansive openness, which I think is just glorious. I think it's beautiful, but also dangerous if we try to get too dark, too dense, too heavy. Let's see. No, I think that's it. I think that's the crux of the chart, Kimberly. Yeah. I mean, we could nitpick, we could go into other aspects, but that's it. That's the central purpose of the chart. Cool. Awesome. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. And we're just going to turn that on. For some reason, interesting for those of you watching the recording, I apologize for this kind of sidetrack, but what's interesting about Facebook is that they've decided that they're automatically going to switch all my posts to private when I go to post them. So weird. Might be a Mercury in Scorpio thing, you know, Mercury, the planet of communication, Scorpio, the planet of secrets, because Mercury is transiting Scorpio right now. But I think it's interesting. I just had to manually switch the live to public instead of only me, like random. So that's astrology at work. Okay, now that we are done with Kimberly, let's move on to Susan. And Susan has Aquarius on the rising, making Saturn the ruler of the chart. Where's Saturn? Where's Saturn? There he is. Down in the 12th. Down in the 12th, where people go to cook. Happy early birthday to Susan. Sun in Sagittarius. Jupiter in Sagittarius. Well done. Well done. At the time, a newly ingress North Node, South Node, Virgo, Pisces. Ooh, Susan, the more I look at your chart, the more interesting it gets. The more interesting it gets. You know, you've got the chart of a great therapist, Susan. You've got the chart of a great therapist. Because when we look at Aquarius on the rising, Aquarius is a sign of natural objectivity and somewhat scientific analysis. Aquarius is the air sign of Saturn, which means that it's all about no nonsense, no frills, give it to me like it is. Yes, we're an air sign, right? We're about possibilities, mentality, expanding awareness, gaining freedom. Aquarius is also the rebel, right? But it is still ruled by Saturn. It is still a sign that restricts. It is still a sign that is astringent, that is drying, that pulls out all the excess and is only focused on the truth. Right? And because you've put the Lord of your chart in the 12th house, so interesting that you're tuning in, my dear. I see you on Instagram, because we were just talking about the 12th house, weren't we? Divinity. So anyway, sorry, just talking my Instagram people. That Saturn in the 12th house. The 12th house is a very powerful place in the chart for a couple reasons. It's the place that we go to cook. And when I say that, traditionally the 12th house is associated with things like jails and hospitals. Yeah, places where people are put in order to stew, right? And sometimes they make it out. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they rise like a phoenix from the ashes. Other times they suffocate underneath the weight of their shackles, right? But having the Lord of your chart there, Susan, especially Saturn, who's in his home sign of Capricorn, excellent placement, right? Very strong, very stern, very strict Capricorn. You bring that energy into the 12th house and you're able to take a place that is very confusing, very watery, very much about not knowing where the next step is going to be, kind of being in the throes of the healing process, right? And Saturn is all about rules, boundaries, clear yeses and nos, working towards a success over time, right? And it makes you naturally able to facilitate other people's healing processes, but also kind of be a facilitator of other people's prisons, right? It gives you the keys, like you are the warden, yeah? Having Saturn ruling the chart from the 12th. Warden is an excellent archetype for you to tap into, Susan. And it's not just this Saturn. It's not just this Saturn. You also have your moon in Virgo in the 8th house of business. Your need to follow the rules is extensive. Absolutely extensive. Now, when you get to playing with your friends, right? Sun in Sagittarius, Jupiter in Sagittarius, Mars in Sagittarius, Mercury in Sagittarius in that 11th house of friendships, right? You're able to flip the script and turn that strict earth aspect of you off, which I like. I like that, right? You're able to have these two sides of you that are so strong and so concrete on one hand, and then so fun and so flamboyant and so extra on the other. I love that for you. I really do. And although I think, there is this natural problem solver warden energy in the chart, your North Node in the 8th house of business, taxes, other people's money, death to a certain degree. You're here to master these concepts with the North Node in Virgo here. But you're also here to make friends along the way, right? Having a Sagittarius stellium in the 11th house makes you extremely sociable, right? Very tapped into your community, your tribe at large. And sometimes it can be rather confusing because Sagittarius is very different from Capricorn. Your strict side, your astringent side is very different from the fun of Sagittarius, the lightheartedness of Sagittarius. How do you balance those two energies? And I think the key to understanding that process is your Venus and Scorpio up in the 10th house, paired with Neptune and Scorpio in the 10th house. You're here to be recognized as the queen of the uncomfortable, right? And that's sometimes making people uncomfortable and sometimes pulling people out of that discomfort, right? You are both the judge and the jury, right? You are the person who can free somebody from their shackles, but also put them on, Yeah. And it is up to you to understand through not only your personal will and your personal studies, but also through divine will and understanding and kind of reading the room, right? Which piece of you they get. Fascinating, powerful, and so interesting. Definitely a lot to go over in terms of archetypes in this chart. You've just really summarized your chart in a few core places. So when I look at a chart and when I analyze a chart, you know, sometimes it's about balancing 50 different pieces. Here you've only really created 2, maybe 3. And it's very easy to see the pattern here. And as long as you stick to that pattern, understand that pattern, embrace that pattern, work with that pattern, life will be easy. The minute that you try to be lackadaisical, the minute that you try to be too emotional, the minute that you try to play the victim, right? All of that starts to crumble and you start to lose a lot of the power that's naturally woven into the fabric of your chart. Lovely, Susan. Absolutely lovely. I think that's pretty much it for you. Brilliant. Lovely chart, Susan. Such a fan. Such a fan. Good morning. Hey, Alex. How you doing? Let's go ahead and we'll move to chart number 3. Chart number 3 is going to be Carrie. Good morning, Carrie. How are you? Cheers. And the synchronicities continue. Why do the synchronicities continue, you may ask? Because just like the last chart that had a 12th house emphasis, Carrie's chart has a 12th house emphasis. The ruler of the chart, because Aries is on the ascendant, is also Mars and Pisces in the 12th house, along with Sun and Pisces in the 12th. Now, this is what's fascinating in terms of rulership, right? The last chart was different because the last chart had power. Yeah. A Jupiter in Sagittarius, a Saturn in Capricorn presiding over the chart. Here we have no such rulership. Unfortunately. Unfortunately. So Carrie's going to have a much more difficult time with things like self-confidence, self-esteem, navigating the healing process. It will make her a very intuitive individual with that Pisces sun in the 12th, right? But the intuition can be the downfall because the 12th house is not known for boundaries, and it requires them. It is a necessary process to have boundaries in the 12th house. And if Carrie doesn't understand that and start to develop her intuitive abilities through ritual, routine, self-study, right, practices, often on a daily basis, then that will be a very difficult space for Carrie to navigate, and she will need a lot of assistance in that area of life. The ruler of the 12th house, the ruler of the ruler, is Jupiter in Libra retrograde in the 7th, co-present with Saturn in Libra retrograde in the 7th. It's a very interesting play now that we look at both Saturn and Jupiter conjoining in Aquarius on the 21st. For those of you who are not aware of that formation happening in 2020, massively important. Only happens about every 20 years, right? And for that conjunction to happen in a fellow air sign, Carrie's about to get some serious movement in her relationship house because of that. So lots of fun dynamics there. But relationships are a funny thing for Carrie. There is strength here in the relationships, but a strength in terms of boundaries, right? I think what I'm seeing in the chart, Carrie, is you intentionally medicate your life through your chosen partnerships, which is a valid strategy. Valid strategy. And I think is helpful in the case of your chart, because you need somebody else's perspective. You need somebody else to come forward and say, hey, I know that you're considering this, but have you tried it another way? Right? For those of you who know that I love all things kind of Disney, Pixar, cartoony movies, James and the Giant Peach comes forward in my head when at the very beginning of the movie, James is sitting on the beach with his parents, and his dad says, "Why don't you try looking at it another way?" That's very much the function of your relationships, Carrie, is you intentionally bring them in as the puzzle piece that you need to not just fill that void, right? Because you have your moon here in the 7th house of relationships, that emotional need for you to connect with somebody on a very intimate level, yeah, and share possibilities with them. But you also share your perspective with them. And that's an important thing to understand, is the person that you choose to bring into your life should have a level-headedness about them, right? And a level of discernment, an ability to detect the bullshit. Right? Having an exalted Saturn in the 7th house of relationships is glorious, right? But instead of those boundaries coming from within you, right, you've decided to bring them in through other people. And that's kind of something that you need to be aware of. Because if you had your own boundaries, I think you would squash your own gifts, right? Because that Sun in Pisces in the 12th house, naturally so intuitive, so ambiguous, so connected to healing, it's almost an absorption into the healing process. You get lost in that, right? You need somebody else to pull you out. And that's kind of where you find it. It wouldn't surprise me along the way if we had some issues with children or parenting, because the North Node in Leo in the 5th house of children and parenting is being ruled by that Sun in Pisces. When we see the 12th house as a house of transformation and potentially health crisis, yeah, we might see health crises in the children. And also the idea of parenting, needing to transform that topic, needing to understand how you lead, how you coach the next generation, how you impart your wisdom, your gifts onto the next generation. Because with the Mercury retrograde in the chart, communication is often difficult. So how do you allow your feelings, your thoughts, your experiences to translate into bettering somebody else's experience? Yeah. Often it will take the assistance of another, a translator. Yeah. So if you can find that translator, if you can have somebody in your life who's able to be your guards, right? Think of bowling, yeah, your safety lanes. Yeah. That's probably going to be the most important part of your chart, honestly, is surrounding yourself with the right people so that you can not only contribute to their process, but also have them contribute to you healing this very healing journey of yours. Putting the ruler of your chart in the 12th house of karmic healing without rulership or exaltation, it's a bold move. It's a bold move, and it does require more effort, more work on your part this go around. But it's not something that you need to do alone, Carrie, right? It's something that your chart actually requires you to build a team. So build it, right? Sometimes you're the parent, sometimes you're the child, and that's okay, right? Everybody's at a different stage, and for you, you're in the healing and the learning stage this go around. And I think that's important to keep in mind, is you're not really here to focus on the success. You're not really here to focus on the work, right? The day-to-day enslavement of your kind of time and energy serving other people. You're here to work on you, yeah, and you need a team to help you do that. So focus on your personal life, personal growth, personal development as the major aspect of your chart. Excellent. Thank you, Carrie. Okay, so we are moving on to chart number 4. And we have Laura. Laura, how are you? Cheers. Tricky. Tricky, tricky. Very tricky, actually. You've really put a lot of interesting placements in your chart, my dear. And they're interesting for various reasons. Like booby traps. Right? First and foremost, your ascendant is in Scorpio, applying to Pluto in Scorpio. Right? That naturally associates you with Hades, god of death, lord of the underworld. You're attracted to all things occult, all things hidden. Yeah? The rot and the bugs underneath the log. You know, there's a visceral part of you that desires to delve into the depths of any person, place, or thing and expose its truest nature. Right? And that's a responsibility that you have. Not necessarily a personal trait, but a responsibility. Yeah? Makes friendships difficult, doesn't it, Laura? Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Not only that, but that Pluto, total, mwah, chef's kiss, excellent. That Pluto at 15 degrees is making an exact sextile to your sun, who is Cazimi Mercury retrograde in Virgo, the sign of his exaltation, in the 11th house of friendships. Like, friendships are interesting, Laura. Interesting. You know, it's almost like you learn from other people's mistakes, right? And you just accumulate mistakes. And the best thing that somebody could give to you is what they've learned not to do in their life. So you can kind of patchwork it onto yourself and make sure that you don't make those mistakes as well. And part of that is just having the ruler of your chart in the 8th house of business. Right? You understand that there are certain laws, there are certain rules, there is a game to be played. There is a right and there is a wrong. There are options, but there is always a right and a wrong. Yeah? And those exist on a spectrum, but there is a perfect choice and an imperfect choice. And it often has to do with ignorance. And so you surround yourself not only with people who are not ignorant, but you almost absorb and reflect their ignorance so that you are not ignorant. Beautiful strategy. A moon in Aries in the 6th house does make you extremely competitive in the workplace, but you're right on the edge. That moon is at 29 degrees Aries, just a degree away from being exalted in Taurus. I think one of the things that you're learning, Laura, is to calm the fuck down. Calm the fuck down. Because that moon in Aries at the end of her cycle in that sign, a moon in Aries in general is just going to be very much about moving forward, emotionally pushing past boundaries, initiating, feeling the emotional rush, the excitement of being better, right? But at the end of that sign, so close to her exaltation in Taurus, where she would be in the 7th house of relationships, able to soak in all the sensual delights of a moon in Taurus. I think you're really, like, part of your life this go around is to learn how to make that transition. Yeah. Learn how to be more Venusian. And it's difficult. It's difficult for you for many reasons. The first is, speaking of Venus, she's up in the 11th house of friendships in Virgo. Picky. Venus is in her detriment in Virgo. She is the lady of luck and abundance and overflowing compassion in the restrictive, data-oriented sign of Virgo. You've turned Venus into a Karen. You know? And so a lot of what I think your chart is asking you to learn this time around is once you've accumulated all the facts, once you've accumulated all the details, once you've figured out where you're going and how you're going to get there and all of the pitfalls along the way, and you've run the Excel spreadsheet and all that nonsense, Take a goddamn break, Laura. Laura, my darling, right? Not everything is about the analysis. Not everything is about the perfection. Not everything. It's safe, right? And it allows you to box in the unpredictable. I understand. Oh, I understand. More than you know. But, we do need just a little bit of a break, Laura. Little bit of a break. And you've experienced that with friends. Those rare moments where everything falls into place and that Jupiter and Leo in the 10th house gets activated and you become this radiant ball of hot gas in the middle of a party and you just expand and allow your radiance to fill the room. Yeah? You've had that. But it does take a certain amount of relaxation in order to achieve that. And I think that you're here to learn what that means for you. In addition to all the teaching, in addition to all the rectification of communication, in addition to kind of everything else you're working on in your charts, you've got a lot spread out. So you've got many kind of irons in the fire. But as you learn to balance these personalities, and as you start to understand that your dominant mode is the aggressive accumulation of rightness, it's time to counterbalance that with some niceness. Yeah. Gotta get some sugar in there, darling. Gotta get some sugar in there. Cool. I think that's the major message of the chart. Cool. Thank you, Laura. I appreciate you donating your chart to the live stream. We've got one more chart, if my mouse will cooperate. Yep, there we go. And Sherry is our last chart of the day. I am suspicious of that 1:30 birth time, Sherry. Just remember, right, if this is a guesstimation, if any of your times are guesstimations, the chart has the potential to be compromised, right? But we'll read this chart as if it is correct. Aries ascendant puts Mars as the ruler of the chart. Mars is up in Sagittarius in the 9th, makes you extremely spiritual, very spiritual. Although it's difficult for you to express that spirituality, there's a lot of hiddenness in the chart. Even though you like to feign that you're an open book, Sherry, we know from looking at the new moon in your chart and this Mercury retrograde who's hiding behind the sun, yeah, that you're not used to telling people the whole story. I get it. It's easier to lie, right? It's easier for actions to speak louder than words, especially when you're trying to formulate your words and feel yourself out as you go. It's not a crime. It's not a crime. Yeah. So act, let your actions and that 9th house of spirituality, travel, foreigners, higher education, let your actions speak. Yeah. But don't think that your actions are the only things that are going on, Sherry. A new moon in the chart is notoriously difficult, right? Because 99% of your emotions are behind the scenes and you don't share those, right? You just don't share those. Unless you find somebody who's able to pull those out of you, which is rare, but it'll often happen at work. Somebody specifically will come along and they'll just blow you out of the water, often a superior or somebody who holds power over you. Somebody who will be often foreign. And as you find that one person who's able to pull those emotions out of you, that is a therapeutic relationship that I think you should keep around, even though it is terribly uncomfortable. Sometimes it's important karmically for you to indulge in the things that make you uncomfortable. Let's see. Yeah, lots of potential international travel for work. going back to the country of your origin for work, because that 6th house of work is being ruled by a retrograde Mercury in the 9th house of travel. Your relationships, blessed by Venus, although you are learning to understand what it means to have the darker side of the relationships be present as well. I understand that. Because it's one thing for things to be nice all the time, but I think part of what you're looking for is to respect the hidden. And if you're marrying somebody or having a relationship with somebody who's literally all nice all the time, that can be very boring. Yeah. So maybe finding somebody with not too many secrets, but just enough of a dark side to sink your teeth into, if you know what I mean. So says the Scorpio rising. Having Saturn in Aquarius in the 11th house of communication, of friendships, travel. Why am I tongue-tied all of a sudden? That Mercury retrograde is getting to me. That Saturn in Aquarius in the 11th house of communities and friendships, right? That's a pretty exalted placement. I really like the idea of you traveling, teaching to large groups, making that a big part of your business, potentially translating, philanthropic efforts, all really good stuff. I like it a lot. But again, I think the major conflict here is you specifically being checked by your superiors at work, right? That's the major relationship dynamic that I'm seeing as an issue. That, and you can't seem to put down roots to save your life. Again, the things that are comfortable are not for you this go around, darling. You're not here to find comfort. You're here to rebel. You're here to grow. You're here to succeed, right? You're not here to play it safe. Yeah? In fact, you're moving away from safety. The South Node in Cancer in the 4th house, you're moving away from all that is nurturing. Yeah? For you, nurturing comes in the form of expansion, dynamic growth, possibility, inspiration. Yeah? And sometimes it does take somebody who can see you for who you are and who holds power over you to say, hey, you're playing it safe. Yeah, you're trying to hide when you should be opening. Yeah. And I think that that's the major function of the relationship. Because again, the work relationship, not just that, but your interpersonal relationship, Venus at 29 degrees of Libra in the 7th house, just about to make her transition into the 8th house in Scorpio. There's a lot that needs to happen in terms of questioning yourself, right? But if you hide, if you withdraw, then you're not taking an accurate analysis, which is why I think you're always trying to strive, to grow, right? To expose. So let's keep that thing going and not necessarily recoil. Yeah, because a lot of your chart momentum is pushing you up and out. And I think that that's the right place for you to be. The minute that you try to play it safe, the minute that you try to retreat back into that safety net, the worse you're going to be. Worse you're going to be. And sometimes it takes figureheads in your life to look you straight in the eye and say, hey, don't do that, right? You're better than that. Because there's so much sociability. Saturn in Aquarius, Sun in the 9th house, ruler of the chart in the 9th house. Like your chart is very much about expansion. Cool. Excellent. Thank you, Sherry. I appreciate you donating your chart to the live stream. But that is it, everybody. That is it for today, at least. We will be back on Wednesday, 10:30, to do another round of the live streams. If you would like to donate your chart, please feel free to private message me your birth date, birthplace, exact birth time. I will add you to the list. The list is rather long, so please be patient, but I will message you when your chart is featured. If you would like to schedule a private consult where we go deeper into your chart, feel free to go to my website, as well as if you'd like to learn astrology. I have a fun class coming up on the top 3, Sun, Moon, and Rising, on December 5th, I believe, which is a Saturday. Details for that are on the website, ScorpioRisingAstrology.com. And that's pretty much it for me today. So have a happy start to your week. Happy Sun in Sagittarius. Happy Venus in Scorpio. And may the stars be ever in your favor.